You're watching Grampian Television. It's now 10 o'clock and time for the news from ITN.
Baby, I will be your ever-loving fan. Give me the drink I really love, a bottle or a can. It's Frothy Man. I don't want to drink no shit, 'cause man, that's really rough. But when it comes to Cresta, here's one bear that just can't get enough. It's Frothy Man.
The BBC strike is over. They'll pay 16.5%. The petrol drivers settle, but that's secret. If you want to ask a policeman, try the West End. We captured the moon, but what did we do with it? At London Airport, Christmas is fogged off. Good evening.
This is Brentford Nylons, the money savers, where you can save pounds on nylon sheets, bedspreads, housecoats, nighties, and of course, top quality polyester cotton sheets in prints and plains. Only from Brentford Nylons, the money savers.
The BBC's strike over pay is over. It ended rapidly tonight after, first, the BBC staff got a 12.5% pay rise awarded by the Central Arbitration Committee, plus another 4% to deal with anomalies. And second, the BBC management reinstated 11 film processors who had been sacked because they'd refused to process film shot by freelance camera crews during a ban on staff overtime. The 12.5 plus 4% rise is well above the government's present pay guideline. The BBC's Director General, Mr. Ian Trethowan, had said the government had warned him that anything above 5% would jeopardise any further rise in the television licence. But an arbitration committee's award is allowed under the pay policy, and so is outside sanctions. Mr. Trethowan said tonight he was delighted that BBC One television will be back at 3 p.m. tomorrow and BBC Two at 1:30. Geoffrey Archer's watched the BBC's troubles today.
Take a loaf of Sunblest. Fresh every day.
Just after 4 o'clock this afternoon, the strike started, and BBC personnel, who are members of the ABS, picketed the entrance to Broadcasting House. The BBC's 4 radio channels were merged into one, and listeners heard the news like this.
Well, we regret now, but because of industrial action, we have to leave our advertised programmes at this junction. From now until further notice, BBC Radios 1, 2, 3 and 4 will combine to bring you an all-network radio service on VHF channels and on 1500 metres long wave.
But the strike had begun just as the Central Arbitration Committee was rushing through a recommendation of a 12.5% rise. Such recommendations normally take weeks to prepare. Hurriedly, the parties got together at the government's conciliation service, ACAS, and within an hour it was all over. The union secretary announced the return to work from midnight tonight. Had the strike been necessary?
I think it's difficult to answer that. Clearly, we established at the CAC this morning, to Professor Wood's satisfaction and that of his colleagues, that what we've been saying for a long time about BBC rates is correct. I think the very fact that there was the industrial dispute was the reason why he was prepared to expedite his consideration of the thing and give us this award today. Yes, to that extent, clearly the strike has had a substantial effect. I don't believe in any way it's coloured his view of the evidence or that was submitted to him.
So what does this result mean? Does it mean normal schedules over Christmas?
Yes, indeed. I'm very pleased to say it will mean that most, if not all, our programmes will go out as scheduled in the Radio Times.
Are you surprised, though, at the Arbitration Committee's decision to offer 12.5%?
I'm not surprised. For months we've been telling everybody that the pay levels in the BBC have been very much lower than those in ITV other comparable bodies that the CAC has found it appropriate to compare us with. And we put in the evidence, and the evidence indicated to us that yes, we were due for quite a considerable award. What has surprised and delighted us is the remarkably quick response that the CAC has found itself able to make.
Toblerone, out on its own, triangular chocolate, that's Toblerone, made with triangular almonds from triangular trees, and triangular honey from triangular bees. And oh, Mr. Confectioner, please, give me Toblerone.
There'll be no ITV programmes in the Yorkshire television area over Christmas. A productivity agreement was reached between the company and the technicians' union leaders yesterday, but today it was rejected by the local union committee in Yorkshire. So the station will stay off the air, and the 3 programmes it was to provide for the ITV network on Christmas Day and Boxing Day won't be shown. Better news for Christmas motorists. The Esso petrol tanker drivers have called off their overtime ban, which has led to panic buying and long queues at filling stations. BP and Texaco drivers, who'd also imposed an overtime ban, are expected to follow suit, and the threat of a national strike from January the 3rd now looks unlikely. How easy it will be to get petrol over Christmas will, of course, depend on how many garages stay open. The Esso management has made a new pay offer to the drivers. It's considerably less than the 40% they were after, but no one's saying exactly how much it is. Our industrial correspondent, Giles Smith, saw the flow of petrol starting to get back to normal.
To find North Sea oil. To build bigger rigs and platforms than any previously built. To lay larger undersea pipelines at greater depths and for longer distances than any previously laid. Then to get the oil ashore in sufficient quantities to make Britain self-sufficient by the end of the 70s. All this requires tenacity, inventiveness, imagination, and experience. We know. We've been here right from the start.
Within hours of the new Esso deal being agreed in all-night talks with the unions, Esso's big London terminal near London Airport was back in full operation. So far, no one's saying how much the company have improved on their original 11 to 14% offer, but it seems to have been enough for the Esso men to call off their overtime ban. They won't actually be voting on the offer until next Wednesday, and although there were some doubts about how the vote would go, they said they were prepared to stand by their union's instruction to work normally for the time being. As the tankers arrived at hard-pressed filling stations near the terminal this afternoon, there were still long queues of motorists waiting to fill up. Despite warnings that panic buying could only make the situation worse, drivers in London, at any rate, seemed determined they weren't going to be caught short. The drivers employed by the other 4 companies, BP, Shell, Mobil and Texaco, seem certain to get a similar offer early next week, and there seems no reason why they shouldn't accept it too, so scenes like these should be completely unnecessary by the middle of next week. Giles Smith, News at 10, West London.
Everyone's a fruit and nut case, crazy for those Cadbury's nuts and raisins. When you're at the races, all their smiling faces, out in chilly Piccadilly or in an oasis. Everyone's a fruit and nut case, crazy for those Cadbury's nuts and raisins. When you're on vacation, what a combination, Cadbury's fruit and nut.
Everyone's a Cadbury's fruit and nut case.
In Strathclyde, 100 extra police, 30 cars and armed units are out after reports that a white Opel had been seen twice in Motherwell. Police throughout Britain have been looking for a white Opel with the registration number APU 827S since the new IRA bombings in England. Tonight, one person reported seeing 2 men walking into a garage for a can of petrol, saying their car had broken down. One of them was said to have an Irish accent, but that now seems to be a cold trail. In many cities, police leave has been cancelled in the search for IRA men, and thousands of extra police are in the high streets watching over Christmas shoppers. As Jeremy Hands found out, the highest concentration of police has been in London's Oxford Street.
The police policy is simple. The more blue uniforms there are, the less likely it is that anyone's going to try anything. And apart from the 2,000 uniforms, an undisclosed number of which are concealing arms, there's a large contingent of plainclothesmen stopping and questioning shoppers. In addition, the centre of the capital is ringed by police whose job it is to stop suspects even getting to the West End. All police leave has been cancelled until further notice, and they're all working a 12-hour day. Hundreds of 999 calls have been made from members of the public who've seen suspiciously parked cars or found parcels where they shouldn't be, or just seen someone acting strangely. But despite the fact we're technically going through a terrorist campaign, the festive spirit still keeps breaking through the tension. The most common question the police were asked today was not about bombs or parcels, but directions to tube stations and toilets. But the police will stay out in force, even though it is for the moment, as one constable put it, all quiet on the West End front. Jeremy Hands, News at 10, Central London.
Up and down the country, cows have been arguing. They've a problem that needs talking about. But now that they've chewed things over, they're resigned to the fact that even if they could make a butter that was easy to spread when cold, chances are that it would still taste like new stalk SB margarine. Firm on the knife, soft on the bread, and cool in the mouth. New stalk SB margarine. It doesn't come from the dairy, but it's just like you'd expect a soft butter to be.
America's Secretary of State, Mr. Cyrus Vance, has said that the United States and Russia are close to reaching agreement on limiting the nuclear arms race. American officials said they hope to make a joint declaration with Russia announcing a successful end to the SALT talks, which have lasted 6 years on and off, tomorrow.
Rhodesia says it has again attacked black nationalist guerrilla bases inside Zambia. And it says it's rescued 31 black Rhodesian soldiers and civilians who'd been captured by the guerrillas. Zambia has confirmed there were attacks, but says they weren't on guerrilla camps, but on one of their own army's training camps near Lusaka. If that's true, it would be the first attack on Zambia's own army. There have been no reports of casualties. A pressure group, the Scorpion Society, who help white Rhodesians wanting to come to this country, are planning a test case. If they win, they could open the front door for thousands more Rhodesians to come to Britain. At present, more than 100,000 Rhodesians are thought to be eligible because their parents were born here. Sue Lloyd-Roberts has been looking at the present claim.
This week, woman takes a worry out of Christmas. Our 8-page cook-ahead timetable tells how. Knit these sequin tops, you could save pounds. Plus a lazy girl's guide to glamour. It's all in woman. Buy it tomorrow.
Mrs. De Silva was born in Rhodesia, and when she came to Britain last year, she applied for a British passport on the grounds that 3 out of 4 of her grandparents were born in Britain. But the application has been turned down, a decision now being challenged by the Scorpion Society, who know the claim could affect the future of thousands of Rhodesians, and who are encouraged by the fact that MPs who've written to the Foreign Office on the matter have received conflicting replies. A letter from a minister here at the Foreign Office, Ted Rowlands, in May said that 150,000 Rhodesians had the right of residence here because their parents or grandparents were born in the United Kingdom. But 4 months later, another letter from another minister, Evan Lourd, said that only Rhodesians whose parents were born here had that right. Clearly, there's a contradiction here which the Scorpion Society is determined to exploit. Lawyers employed on Mrs. De Silva's behalf by the Scorpion Society are prepared to take this test case to court if necessary, and I asked Mrs. De Silva why she was so determined.
Well, 3 of my grandparents were born in Britain, and I've always felt that I was British. I've been brought up to believe that I was a British citizen.
Now, if this court case of yours fails and your appeal to the Home Office, what alternatives do you have?
I have no alternative but to go back to Rhodesia, which I really don't want to do. I don't want to go back, and I wouldn't know which side to fight on.
Mrs. De Silva and her lawyers are hopeful about the case, which, if won, could embarrass and add new burdens to the government's immigration policy. Sue Lloyd-Roberts, News at 10 at the Passport Office.
Last January, Sainsbury's introduced Discount 78, Now, more and more shoppers have seen what they can save.
I can save about £2 a week. Buy more for less money. I think the value is really second to none.
Discount 78 means what it says, lower prices on things you have to buy all year round.
It means regular savings every week. Saves money.
Yes, Sainsbury's Discount 78. It's saving you money all year round.
Oh, I find I save money every week at Sainsbury's.
There's always some bad news around at this time of year. In America, police think that there's been a mass murder of more than 30 people near Chicago. They've found 8 bodies in a house, and they've detained a 37-year-old man who has a record of sex crimes. In India, 5 people have been killed and 8 injured during more protests against the jailing of the former Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. In New Delhi, rioters burned an effigy of the current Prime Minister, Mr. Desai.
And after the break, the close encounter they think they're having in Sicily. Dave Sexton's United now fall to lowly Bolton. And if Mummy's kissing Santa Claus, he's probably a computer. That's in a couple of minutes.